I got crossed up by a 13-year-old playing basketball the other day, so I hung my ankle
Oh,
up.
no.
Oh, we're recording.
What's going on, world? Welcome to episode 20, Value of the Sun, Sunday Scaries. We are officially into the 20s now in terms of episodes. It's been a long year and a lot has changed, but here we are. It is episode 20. I'm excited to have you. I'm your host, Sean Nickel, as always, coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona, baby, Valley of the Sun. Before we dive into who the guest is today and what the guest topic is about, I do want to get back to kind of sharing the books that I'm reading, the stuff that I'm studying right now. Right now I'm reading The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle about how to build successful cultures and the few things that it takes to get there. I'll definitely be doing a video and a blog post to talk about that in the future. But if you are looking for recommendations on reading some books, this is like my 10th or 15th book. I'm losing count right now of the year. And every one of them I found something pretty darn impactful, something that I've been using in my everyday life. So The Culture Code is the new book I'm reading right now. I'll probably put a link below just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And if you don't like to read, use Blinkist. I've talked about that in a previous podcast as well. Seems like something that's pretty easy for everybody to use. 15 minutes, you get the whole book, you get the gist of it, and you get rolling. So today's guest is Eric Olanowski. Eric is the lead journalist for the U.S. Olympic wrestling team. Got my Team USA tank top on. I'm representing the U.S. Olympic wrestling team in my own way, which is just wearing a tank top out here in the sun. So I've not wrestled since 8th grade, and it's the hardest sport on the planet. We talk a lot about the Olympics and wrestling as a sport and what's happening with the current state of the world. But more importantly, I chose Eric to come on the show because he's the definition of matching your passion and being able to run after it and build a career out of it. So for those of you that don't know Eric, he was a very successful wrestler in high school and wrestled for Michigan State University as well on a collegiate level. And over the last 7-ish years, he's gone from being a construction worker to, building a career around Olympic wrestling and being able to match his passion. So I'll let him talk about how he went from point A to point B. Very excited to have him on, and I'll turn it over to Eric. All right, welcome to episode 20 of Value of the Sun Sunday Scaries. I have Eric Olanowski on the show, who is a journalist for Olympic wrestling, but he's probably more well known for the Kendall, Brooklyn, and Eric Crew show. I'm going to turn it over to Eric, kind of talk about his life after college, and we'll go from there. Kick it off.
Things started for me. I graduated in 2012 from Michigan State. I was wrestling. So the interesting thing is I had my kids while I was still in college. I had twin girls. So I was kind of forced to find extra jobs just to make ends meet because I was wrestling. I was still going to school. So full-time athlete, full-time dad, full-time student. And then I had to find ways of bringing in some extra income. So at night I was working construction to try and make ends meet. I started to pick up broadcasting. I started to pick up some extra gigs broadcasting, and then it just continued to trickle down or trickle up, I guess, or however you want to look at it. And it turned into me transitioning to a full-time position as a journalist with Olympic wrestling, traveling the world and doing what I love.
So is that your full-time job?
When I was with the company I was previously working for, Jackson National Life Insurance, I had, I want to say like 26 days off.
Oh, okay.
And those 26 days that I had, I was using all towards wrestling. Everything I was doing was geared towards wrestling. And my wife finally said to me, if you're taking all these vacations, or if your vacation days are going towards wrestling, why don't you just jump full head of steam? What it boiled down to is I covered the 2016 Rio Olympic Games, and to go from achieving one goal and one dream to go back to testing software was just, it wasn't.
That's brutal. That's so brutal.
It was brutal. Yeah. I spent 2 weeks in Rio for the Olympics. And so in 2012, I wrote down 4 things in my wallet because I wanted it to be visible to me every single day. And that was take over the city, take over the state, take over the country, take over the world. And that wasn't some Genghis Khan type shit that where I just wanted to just take over the world. But it was me reminding myself that the goals I have, I'm never going to achieve if I look at it as only getting to the Olympics. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to be the best journalist I could in East Lansing. because I was living there. Then I wanted to be the best journalist I could in Michigan. Then I wanted to be the best journalist I could in America, and then try and get to that big stage. So it was me in 2012 watching the Olympics. I wrote that one day I will be at the Olympics, but I knew I had to take it small steps. So once, from 2012 to 2014, I worked every single day to get to the Olympic Games. And then I get there, and then 2 weeks later, I have to go back to testing software.
Back to reality.
And it was just back to reality. So it was just I knew I still had a lot of work to do, so I didn't want to just quit everything there. Mm-hmm. But back to your question, yes, I am working full-time now, and I have been since late 2017.
Okay. So I feel like you were a little surprised that I asked you to come on when I hit you up via text. But the reason that I wanted to have you on is because something that I have been doing a lot of research on and kind of figured out early on is like the best chance you have to have fulfillment and happiness long-term and whatever career you choose is to match your passion with your work. Obviously, you are not passionate about testing software, right? But I do know from being around you for a long time now that you were a wrestler for 20 something years. Like how many years do you think you were an actual wrestler? If you had to put a number on it.
Probably 15, around there.
15 years, right? So high school, you wrestled at Michigan State. According to people on my Facebook, you were good at it. So that's good to know. But it's not very common that someone gets to take the thing that they've been passionate about for 15-ish years and then make a career out of it. And so the reason I wanted to have you on is because that is such a rare thing, but it's what I wish everybody in the world could do. If money was never a thing, I would love everyone to kind of pick and choose. You've got to do the best of both worlds. Like now your full-time role that supports you and your family, right, is to specifically be focused on wrestling. So did you ever have early on, let's say late high school and college, did you ever think that this would be your long-term career would be around wrestling, or what did you think you'd be doing growing up?
No, to be honest, I didn't and the way I look at it is I have the most highly coveted position in all of wrestling. I'm at the highest level you can go. If you want to compare it to the NFL, it would be being the NFL's go-to guy. I look at that as what they have trusted me to do is lead the way and spread the word for wrestling. And there's not a lot of positions full-time, especially in wrestling. A lot of people do stuff here and there, but you have to find ways to make ends meet. And that was a big thing for me is coming in. I did have to take a pay cut initially just to prove myself. Right. And that's what a lot of people they can't get past is they're making all this money and they're getting bonuses and they're getting raises every year and they're unhappy, but
they got money, but they're unhappy.
They have money. Yeah. And that's the thing is that we had to sit down and I had to make sacrifices. It had to be little sacrifices here and there to try and get as close to what I was making at my previous job to what I was making now. But yeah, I never thought it would be possible.
Okay. So I'm assuming that your role is there's not a ton of people that do what you do, right? There's, across the country, across the world, on that stage, there's not a ton of people, right? So how do you go from point A, which is I'm in construction work, okay, to point B, which is I'm now the lead journalist for Olympic wrestling. I'm on the biggest stage in the world. How do you go from point A to point B? And what tips do you have for people that are, trying to go after something very similar in their lives?
Do you really want it? Ask yourself, because most people say, and I'm still learning how many years into this job because I said I wanted it, but I didn't know that I would have to be away from my family 2 weeks at a time. I didn't know that my wife would have to step up and take my kids to practices. I didn't know that I would be missing dance recitals. So there's going to be an element of sacrifice that you have to be willing to knock down. I mean, you have to be willing to sacrifice the thing that other people wouldn't be willing to sacrifice. So not only do I write my goals every week, but I write my sacrifices, because most people are willing to write what they want, but most people aren't willing to write what they're willing to give up for it. So, for example, like I just mentioned, I missed a dance recital for the World Championships. So when I'm at the World Championships, I bring my sacrifices. And when I'm ready to cover that tournament, I know that it is going to be everything I have. And because I look at those sacrifices and I read everything that I gave to that. So I write my goals every Monday just to figure out what I want to achieve, and I make them easily attainable. Not easily attainable, but I'm not going to say I want to go to the moon when I'm 30. Like I know that. So it's little steps, like I mentioned before, making sure that I'm the best at every level that I can. You have to also make sure that you're willing to be truly happy for other people succeeding in what you believe that you should be achieving. I had a goal to call the NCAA championships, the finals. There's maybe 14 seats at the head table. And I didn't get there my first year.
Wow.
I don't know if I didn't do enough. I didn't know what I had to do. But when I saw other people sitting at the table, I learned early in my career that jealousy it's a dangerous thing. So I don't get jealous when I see people achieving what I want to achieve. I find a true happiness for them. Because getting away from that jealousy is key. When you're trying to achieve something that most people want or most people think they deserve, those little things are what's going to set you apart. Because I could be jealous, and then if we're talking and you are where I want to be and it comes off the wrong way, I mean, one bad burned bridge could come to bite you in the ass, not now, but it could eventually. So try and find a true happiness, if that makes sense.
So when did you learn that? It's just a naturally competitive thing that if someone has what you want and in your mind you're like, what makes them different than me? Like, how did you learn that? Because that's a valuable skill to have, and it makes your life a lot better. Like if you're not always constantly feeling that way. So how did you learn that?
It came with me trying to stop proving myself to everybody else and start trying to prove myself to myself. And I guess it really goes back to my junior year of high school. I was a 2-time state runner-up, and I knew that I was the best person in the country and that there's only one person that was truly going to beat me, and that was myself. So I had to look in the mirror and realize that this person stopping me is the person who could take me the furthest in life. And once I got past that, I think I went maybe 40, 50-0, didn't lose another match, went on to be ranked number 1 in the country. And it took me to where I am now, just because I was able to get recruited by Michigan State. But I won the Broadcaster of the Year award in 2015. And I realized that I'm doing it for the right reasons. And nobody else can take away from how hard I work, what I sacrifice. And yeah, it would be when I stopped trying to prove myself to other people and started to proving myself to myself.
Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to kind of dig in on too, I've never heard the concept of writing down your sacrifices. Everyone talks about writing down their goals. Did you pick that up or did you just do that yourself? Because that's a really, really good thing to think about. Like, what am I giving up to achieve my goals? How'd you learn that?
My wife, she sets goals a lot. While she was working out, she had all these, I want to lose X amount of pounds and all this. And I'm seeing what she was doing for the work. I wanted her to really focus on what she was giving up for it. So that's where it initially started, was trying to show her that, you may be looking at what the number on the scale says and you're fighting that. But in reality, if you're feeling better and the scale's not changing, what are you trying to accomplish here? So that's where I got it from, is trying to prove to her that what she was doing is really working and she's feeling better, she's looking better, all that. But to go back when the scale doesn't match what you want it to say, go back and read those sacrifices and say, I'm on the right track.
I don't know. It almost would feel like it would motivate you too, to realize I'm sacrificing X, Y, and Z. I need to get this outcome because I am giving up. Obviously things worked out, but if you aren't realizing hey, I'm sacrificing all of these dance recitals, but I'm really not putting 100% effort into the thing I'm trying to chase down, you're just giving up the dance, but you're not realizing you're giving it up. I think a lot of people, they don't think of it that way. I think that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, because you write your goals and you say I want to make it to the Olympic Games, but people forget about it. And then your goals change and whatnot. But even if your goals do change, you still go back and you read some of those sacrifices that you made. And if you could take a little part from that previous goal and gear it towards where you're going now, it is a powerful tool. And when you see it, you do get emotional. You do, because when you achieve what you really want to and you read all those, you're like, it was really worth it.
That's so good. Like, what are your thoughts on a quarter life crisis? What do you think that it means? What do you think about all that?
Well, I think back to my boss. When I was working in my previous role, she would always say that your 20s are where you accumulate all your debt. Your 30s is where you pay it off, and your 40s is when you really start to live, because you have accumulated the debt, you've paid it off, and now you're actually starting to be able to live because you have the money and the means, and you're not tied down by all that other stuff.
I think one thing that's super powerful about what you're currently doing is, when I think of a quarter life crisis, I'm thinking about, is this what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? Like, whatever I'm doing in that moment, right? That could be, in my relationships, that could be in my career. And I wanted to ask you that question because I just had a theory that, based on where you're at in your life, the fact that you made your sacrifices, you chased what you chased, here you are now doing what you truly love. You've matched your passion, right? You have a beautiful wife, love that family, obviously. You have
Thank
two
you.
beautiful daughters, right? Like, I don't think you're going to go through this quarter life crisis because of X, Y, and Z you have lined up. So I just didn't know, from someone who probably isn't experiencing that, like, what your thoughts were on it.
I experienced it a little younger,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, let's dive into that. Yeah.
Because I had my kids at 23. So I was forced to not do what I wanted to do. I was forced to do what I had to do, because I had to put food on the table. And I had to make sure that my wife lives the best life. And I think back to one particular night a lot. And this changed my work habits, because I wouldn't say, like, I wasn't some big druggie or some alcoholic or anything like that, but I was heading down the wrong path and I was only 21, 22. Saying that I'm heading down the right path or the wrong path is crazy. But we sat down. She was pregnant one night, and I was supposed to wrestle a couple weeks, or a week later. And I was cutting weight, and we had one box of noodles, and we had a tiny bit of marinara left. And we put water in the marinara, and she came to the table with one plate as a pregnant woman. And she said, "This is for you. You need it because your competition's coming up." So to see her sacrifice that, I knew immediately that is the woman, even though she was pregnant, right? I knew that I would give anything I had to make sure that she lived the best life. And from there, when I was 22, 23 years old, I knew that I was going to work not just what I wanted to do, but what I had to do for her. So my quarter life crisis really came in my early 20s, because it was something that it just had to get done. I reached it at an earlier point in my life, and the experiences that I had, luckily, when I got to my late 20s, allowed me to say, I'm done doing what I had to do, and I'm going to start doing what I want to do.
So when I hire people at where I work, okay, one thing that I look for is, like, individual sport athletes. So people that wrestle and golf, the people that are at the highest of those highest levels, there's just a different work ethic that they have. And it's very similar to what you said, which is, it's just me versus myself every single day. Really, that's all it comes down to, especially, like, in wrestling, at least you have an opponent, but like when you start thinking of like golf and all these other sports where you're just yourself, why do you think that, like, the individual sport athlete isn't as popular as the team sport athlete is on, like, a grand scale? Because the people that focus on the individual sport, they have another level when it comes to, like, entering the workforce, and it's just a different kind of discipline. And I was just curious what your thoughts are on why it's not as popular. Like, wrestling's not as popular as football. We can agree on that, but why isn't it?
Well, it's sort of like life, right? When you have an easy way out, or you have the availability to place blame on somebody else, that takes a lot of pressure off yourself. But when you look at being an individual sport athlete, you don't have anyone to blame anything on. I could not work out and I'll go lose every match. I don't have the opportunity to say it was my quarterback, right? My quarterback threw the interception. I couldn't catch the ball. There's none of that. So I think that the pressure that you have when you're in a single sport athlete, you learn to take blame. There's no one to backfall on. It is all yourself. If I didn't perform well, it is solely because my nutrition wasn't right, my sleep wasn't right, my habits weren't right. And when you look at team sport athletes, you have somebody else to blame. You don't have anybody else to blame in an individual sport.
If I would take a top tier wrestler who wanted to apply for a role over a top tier team sport athlete any day of the week, just because it's just a different type of discipline that people have. So I mentioned in the beginning, but you are one of the trio of the Kendall, Brooklyn, and Eric Crew show. And it's a show that you put on it feels like every single day with your two daughters. I'm just curious how the brainstorming sessions go as you're heading into these shows. Like, do you guys sit down and think about what you're going to talk about, or is it just we turn the camera on and we roll with it?
I'd say the past maybe 15 shows, we start by throughout the week we have a piece of paper on the counter, and if something crazy happens, we just write it down. And then when we do come, and the thing about the show is I never wanted it to be forced on them, so we only do them when they ask. So if they say, "Oh, can we do a show?" Absolutely. Then we have the show notes. You go ahead, let's do it. But cool. It's never.
I love that.
Yeah, because if I force them to do it, like Wednesday night, 7:00, you need to do it. Then they're gonna get burnt out. And I'm sure you know.
100%.
Just with this show, I'm sure some Sundays you're like, I don't want to do this. I just want to relax, sit by the pool.
Yeah, that's so cool. Like, I don't know. I just think it's I think it's just a cool experience that you get to have with them too, which I don't know. A lot of people don't get to do certain things like that. And I think it obviously with your work and, what you do full time, it obviously translates over to that. Like, I looked at it, like you guys are on episode 67 right now, which is a lot of episodes to have. Do you ever switch the name to the Brooklyn, Kendall, and Eric, or is it always the Kendall, Brooklyn, and Eric show?
We fight about this every single week. So we changed it. What did we? Team Trouble TV. We changed it to the O Show, but it always comes back to the Kendall, Brooklyn, and Eric Crew show. And Brooklyn hates that Kendall's name first.
I can only imagine. That's why I was curious. Where can people follow you? Like, let's talk about social media platforms. Where can we follow Eric?
You can follow me Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Eric Olanowski for everything.
I'll get that in the bottom of the screen. We'll be able to see it. Well, we appreciate having you on. Thank you so much. And hopefully next time we're talking to you, you've taken over the world, and maybe you're covering like the planetary wrestling where it's like Earth versus Mars, and you're the lead caller one day down the road.
Well, thank you. Hey, and while we're at it, I'm having Henry Cejudo on my show, UWW Live, on Wednesday. So it'll be on Instagram live on Wednesday at 2 p.m. And then you can find it on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook on Thursday. So if you guys can check that out, I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll post the links below so you guys can follow it. Again, thank you, Eric, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Cheers.
So thank you again, Eric. Man, the biggest takeaway that I had was, everyone writes down their goals, but not everyone writes down the things that they're going to sacrifice to give up for those goals. And so I found that super powerful. The next time I sit down to build out my week, I'm going to be writing down what I'm sacrificing as well. I just feel like it's a much better way to accomplish your goals because you know exactly what you're giving up to get there, which I found, which is so strong. I'm very excited that he was able to come on and talk about that too. Thank you again for everyone that helped us get to 75 subscribers, which was awesome. I'm glad that Eric's going to be doing a podcast with 75 subscribers instead of 60. So that was cool. But again, stay healthy, stay distanced, and welcome to the Valley of the Sun.